titled Mitigating Security Challenges Through Inclusive Cooperation in the Middle East, South Caucasus, and Central Asia. Allow me to introduce our moderator, Ms. Anja Wellersjock, international editor and member of the editorial board, Tagesspiegel, Germany. Dear moderator, the floor is yours, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. So moving on from the debate of the transatlantic partnership of the previous panel, we will now take a closer look at the region, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the panel, Mitigating Security Challenges Through Inclusive Cooperation in the Middle East, South Caucasus, and Central Asia. My name is Anja Wellersjock, and I'm the international editor at the German newspaper Tagesspiegel, based in Berlin. With this panel, we want to analyze the challenges faced by the region, identify the central actors, and discuss possible paths toward inclusive cooperation. And it's my great honor to welcome our excellent panelists. To my right, please welcome our kind host, Ararat Mirzoyan, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Armenia. To his right, Jean-Noël Barrot, the Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs of France. To his right, Barzan Arabekian, the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of the Palestinian Authority. To her right, Tatiana Molsian, the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. And to the very right, Nigar Göksel, Project Director of the International Crisis Group in Turkey. So, Minister Mirzoyan, as you mentioned in your speech this morning, the title of this year's Yerevan Dialogue, Navigating the Unknown, couldn't be more fitting. As the previous panel discussed, the US, one of the most important actors on the world scene, has become completely unpredictable in its foreign policy, and the EU is scrambling to rise to the immediate need and the use of the window of opportunity to fill the vision of European sovereignty with life. From your point of view, what are the most important challenges that Armenia and the region are currently facing?
Well, hello once again, dear friends, dear guests, and thank you very much for this interesting question. You know, dear colleagues, dear guests, sometimes we, public figures, politicians, journalists, we, during our public appearances are supposed to, and I think this is a big secret, but everybody knows this secret. We are supposed to have the very serious expression of the face and express some clever and complicated ideas. In this case, to answer this question, I'm going to come up with very simple answers because, you know, usually the truth is very simple. And the simple answer in this case, I believe, is that there is huge demand for peace in the world. Everybody is fed up, everybody is tired of, and everybody is exhausted with the wars, be it in Ukraine, the suffering in Gaza, I don't know, the war that we have, and the conflict that we have seen here in South Caucasus and elsewhere. So what makes us a little bit unique, and I'm very sorry for this word, is that in our case, in case of Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict, we have made already tangible steps towards establishment of peace, and it's the bilateral agreement upon the text of draft peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I very much hope that everybody would agree that this is a huge accomplishment, and we are ready to sign this agreement and then eventually, of course, ratify, which will open an era of peace and cooperation in South Caucasus. And coming also to the title of this panel discussion, this model probably, hopefully, could also be exported to, I don't know, of course, every conflict is unique, there are nuances everywhere, but the approach, the general aim to establish peace and then open an era of cooperation and peace could be exported to Ukraine, to Middle East, to some other regions which might be needing intervention. And I want to remind all of us here, our colleagues, politicians, governments, members of parliaments in the world, our final aim and our obligation is to create an environment where our citizens could build their happiness, their livelihood, have better education, better healthcare system, and of course the other things too. So we must act as we are obliged. We must create this environment. First of all, peace and security. I can, of course, elaborate a little bit on the benefits that the peace could bring. For instance, we have been speaking about the crossroads of peace, the establishment of transport corridors here in South Caucasus, unblocking of transport infrastructure here in South Caucasus, mainly between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And we all, if we just have one look at the world map, we can see that unblocking these communications here in this region could connect Europe with Central Asia. But I mean, these are evident things that I don't think there is much necessity to speak about from this panel.
Minister Barrot, moving on to you, looking at the likely window of opportunity for the peace agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia, but also on the impact on security and stability in the region. Is France, is the EU doing enough to support its partners in the region?
Well, first I'd like to thank our host for this second edition of the Yerevan Dialogue with a fantastic program and amazing speakers that has certainly become an outstanding venue for discussions on peace, security and regional integration and which speaks of Armenia as a very central place in this region, a place where solutions are found and new cooperations are created. So thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here. As for your question, I will start with where Ararat left off. I indeed think that there is a great aspiration for peace, but peace cannot, does not fall from the sky. Peace requires that a certain number of principles are followed. The first of which is a very simple principle based on which we drafted the UN Charter 80 years ago that has not prevented all wars and crises around the world, but that has avoided many of them from degenerating into major regional crises. And this principle is very simple. I don't touch your borders, you don't touch mine. I respect your territorial integrity and your sovereignty. And once this principle is established, as we've established it across European countries, members of the European Union, well, you have a solid building block based on which you can develop prosperity through regional integration, through infrastructure, through connectivity, and so on and so forth. But the first building block is indeed the respect of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And yes, we look at South Caucasus as a major region to connect the European Union to the East and to the rest of the world. And that's why we want for peace to be achieved between Armenia and Azerbaijan, not only because we have a very special and long-standing relationship with Armenia, but also because it's in our interests. And that's why we've supported the Armenian authorities in their efforts to come up with a peace plan. That's why we've supported the political agreement on this peace plan when it was reached a few weeks ago. And that's why we're calling upon both parties to now sign and ratify this treaty, so that based on this regional peace, we can build a future of prosperity, regional integration and prosperity in the region that will benefit Armenia, but that will also benefit the European Union.
Thank you. Tatiana Molsian, you bring a number of interesting perspectives to the table. You're from Moldova. You have worked extensively on multilateral and European cooperation. Right now, you're serving as the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. When we look at what the EU is currently doing with its sanction policy, it's closing windows for economic cooperation. Do you see other windows opening? Do you see these developments as a window of opportunity for closing these ties between Europe and Central Asia?
Thank you. well, there is always a window of opportunity. If we don't believe in window of opportunities, we won't be here. And here it means having this discussion, for which I'm very grateful to our host, to the minister, bringing me back to Yerevan and seeing by myself the dynamics and also the progress in not only in the country but also in the region. And there is a window of opportunity, and there is a window of opportunity when we speak not only about the developments and the political opportunities. And
Tatiana, sorry, can you move a little bit closer to the microphone?
There are these opportunities despite the political challenges. And what is important that, yes, we know there is this fatigue, and the minister mentioned of crises, of challenges, but still these many shifts in geopolitical and geoeconomic, I would say, space recently creates these opportunities that we need to seize. And it's good that today we discuss this, how we can plan ahead, the path forward, and having this foresight approach, planning in advance. And we are speaking as, about Middle East, South Caucasus, and Central Asia. And UNOC covers actually quite a diverse region, and I can tell you, it's not easy to bring common issues on the agenda when you have such a diverse membership, or when you have this very different, but at the same time close region to one another. The opportunities are, first of all, in interconnection. So we have to create the dialogue and the connection between the countries, between the regions. We all know, any diplomatic solution without practical processes won't ensure long-lasting peace or solutions. So I think this is where we have to focus on creating that practical opportunities for interconnection, for inclusive cooperation, be it indeed transport, connectivity, trade, or environment. I think this is a very key issue where we have to focus when it comes to addressing challenges that are posed to environment, to climate change, and the fact that Armenia will be hosting the biodiversity COP can play a specific role in that sense.
Thank you. Nigar Göksel, Turkey has been trying to use the developments both on a geopolitical level and on a regional level to strengthen its international role and influence in the region. Can Turkey play the role of an honest broker in the region?
Thank you very much. It's delightful to be in Yerevan again. Well, mediation in the narrow sense of a sort of neutral arbitrator that acts benevolently and is welcomed by both parties equally, I doubt it. But I think Turkey has some very important roles to play. In the broader sense of mediation, Ankara is already and can further carry out roles through back-channel diplomacy, which it's doing, leveraging certain assets that it has, including its location. Because it has an incentive to do so, it's really in Turkey's interest to have stability and open borders in the region. Turkish economy flourishes under those circumstances, unlike some of its rivals. And it also is popular domestically and gives it an international stature. So I think it's definitely in Turkey's interest, and Turkey's been seeing it in its interest to do so in other geographies in its proximity as well. Some have been successful, some less so, some not immediately successful, but later on paying off. So, with some recalibration and some trial and error, Turkey has found itself to be useful in various conflicts in the neighborhood. I think, as some of the other panelists have also mentioned, connectivity is one of those areas where I think Turkey's role can be significant, particularly if it collaborates with the European Union. There's some very clear shared interests between the two for win-win routes to be established, but I also see that there's a risk that they could work at cross purposes. And so one of the things that we need to focus on is to mitigate that risk, because you can see in both Turkey and some European Union countries a mistrust that if you if the other has a leverage, it could potentially use that leverage against the other. So making sure to be working on shared goals together and looking out for each other's interests, I think Turkey and the European Union and European partners can advance connectivity significantly. I must say, sort of a sobering note, Turkey has a lot of other issues on its plate, and a lot of other conflicts that take precedence perhaps in terms of security and immediate sort of pressing need, like the PKK conflict, Syria, Iraq. Of course, Turkey has a strong alliance and solidarity with Azerbaijan, but it also, we note a pronounced appreciation in Ankara these days for Yerevan's evolving posture and pragmatism. So I definitely think there's a potential, but we shouldn't take it for granted. We need to work on it.
Thank you, Nigar. Minister Arabekian, I will come to you in a minute. I just wanted to use this opportunity to address a follow-up to Minister Mirzoyan. Is the possible peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan also an opportunity for normalization of ties between Armenia and Turkey?
Well, to put the long story short, yes. But I also want to express my attitude to this positioning of or this position of the official Ankara. We have launched our dialogue with Turkey, having in mind and publicly saying, both, we and our Turkish colleagues, that this process should take place without any precondition. Now, I want to say that we're happy to see that the Turkish-Armenian dialogue is not that problematic as one could assume. And now we reached a point where the only thing that stands between now and tomorrow, where the diplomatic relations could be established between our two countries and the borders could be finally open and the connection issue could be resolved, is the non-completely finalized state of Armenian-Azerbaijani negotiations and dialogue. Although my personal attitude and my assessment is that if we succeed to have a breakthrough with Turkey, then this breakthrough would definitely have huge positive impact on Armenian-Azerbaijani normalization. But should I take the opportunity and express some other ideas as well, or I should? Okay, go ahead.
So, Minister Arabekian.
Because I have written a couple of things I want.
Wonderful. Yeah, we will come to that in a second. Minister Arabekian, so the war in Gaza has been continuing since the October 7 terror attack by Hamas. How can issues of security that we're discussing right now best be addressed in an environment that is lacking security and stability?
Thank you very much, and I'm very honored and humbled to be here today and amongst distinguished panelists. Yes, I come from an area that is plagued with insecurity and has endured a long time, several decades of insecurity, conflict, and occupation. Today, Gaza is the epic. If anyone looks at the case of Gaza, we will understand what the essence of insecurity means and what the essence of long-term insecurity without finding solutions to this insecurity, what would that result in? And we are seeing the devastation today like we have never seen before. It's impossible to talk about security vis-a-vis Israel-Palestine without speaking on the occupation. Occupation is the biggest destabilizing factor of security, not only for Israel-Palestine, but for the region and probably for the world. If we want to speak on security, we need to derail this policy of territorial expansion by Israel. And territorial expansion by Israel has been clear. The world is clear about it, the international law is clear about it, and if we comply and go by international law, I think we can reach a stage where we can inject the security element. But as it is today, with this expansionist ideology, there will be absolutely no security in the Middle East, not for the Palestinians, not for the Israelis. And the first and foremost issue that we need to deal with is ending this occupation. Today, this genocidal war is the culmination of years and years of insecurities and violations of international law, of human rights, of the rights of people to self-determination. If today this issue is not taken further and dealt with once for all, we don't know when the time is appropriate. Today, now is the time. We cannot wait any longer, not for us as Palestinians, and I can also speak for the Israelis as well. There are many challenges in that regard. One of the most important challenges we need to deal with is the distrust on all sides. We have a distrust in the process of how the whole thing has been dealt with in the last 3 decades since we embarked on this political process on forging peace with Israel.
Minister Arabikian, if I may add a question. Since you're speaking about a distrust, how about the other side? How about the security of the state of Israel when there is a majority of Palestinian leadership, or a significant share at least, still questioning the right of existence of the state of Israel?
Well, today the question that needs to be asked is the security of the Palestinians. Israel exists, and there's a lot of security on the Israeli side.
But the October 7th attacks proved wrong.
Yes, the October 7th attack, I don't want to go into the reasons of the October 7th attacks, but October 7th was violent. Yes, it was violence. It has a reason. But the counter-violence exercised by the state of Israel is way disproportional to the violence that was exercised on October 7th. Violence is denounced by any perpetrator, whether it's us, the Palestinians, or the Israelis. We need to stop that cycle of violence. If anyone thinks that what is happening in Gaza today will bring peace in the future, then that's very naive, because violence only begets violence. And having 50,000 people dead, 120,000 injured, and God knows how many more under the rubble, will not bring peace, neither to Israel nor the Palestinians. The military route is not a starter. We
Minister
need to sit
Arabikian,
around the table.
I'd like to bring in Minister Barrot at this point. Minister Barrot, you've recently reconfirmed France's decision to recognize the state of Palestine. This is not a consensus position in the EU. Could it be a game changer? Could it be the way to peace that Minister Arabikian is describing?
So France has not announced that it has recognized Palestine.
No,
yet.
its intention.
France is chairing a UN conference with Saudi Arabia on the two-state solution, because we have this view that is very broadly shared in Europe and the rest of the world, and that is unanimous in the European Union, that there is no military solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that only a political solution can bring peace and stability to the region and ensure the security of the Israelis as the Palestinians. But right now the urgency is to ceasefire, to the liberation of the hostages of Hamas that needs to be disarmed, and the unhindered access of massive humanitarian help to those that need it in Gaza. Then, and that's the topic of the conference we're working on right now, the question is, how can we preserve the perspective of this political solution? So yes, indeed, European countries, other countries from the West that have not yet recognized the state of Palestine could do so, which would help in preserving the perspective itself. But the way President Macron has been considering this decision is not only to make it a mutual decision of several European countries and Western countries, but to bring other stakeholders to also make movement in the same direction. And this means for the Palestinian Authority that we support to engage into the reform that are needed for it to be able to govern the state of Palestine once it exists. It means for Arab countries, in particular those of the region, to agree, when the war is over, to enter into a security architecture within which the state of Palestine and the state of Israel will coexist. It also means for them at some point to normalize their relationship with Israel. And then it means for Hamas to agree to a perspective of disarmament and to agree not to be associated in any manner to the future governance of Gaza. So what we're trying to do right now is to break the cycle of violence by offering a serious political perspective that is also in the interest of Israel, because it will be building the blocks guaranteeing the security of Israel moving forward. So that's the way or that's the direction we're taking. And hopefully, if all stakeholders take their part, it's a difficult part to take. It requires to take some risk, but if all stakeholders take their share of the risk, then hopefully we'll have made progress by this conference.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Minister Mirzoyan, back to you. Our panel's title speaks of inclusive cooperation. What would this look like for you, for the region at large?
Well, answering this question, I should probably continue where Minister Barrot stopped. By the way, we pretty much share the vision of the French ministry, the vision for the solution of Middle East. Probably the only tangible difference is that Armenia has recognized the state of Palestine, and we have the honor to have the minister participating in the panel. By the way, again, taking the opportunity, I have sent an invitation to our Israeli colleague as well, and I believe this conversation would benefit if our distinguished colleague from Israel also had decided to participate. Nevertheless, so joint engagement and mutual agreement is probably key. You know, again, this is a very simple truth. You cannot establish truth alone. You need at least the other side also wishing and being interested in this peace. That's why we are very much following and very much committed to our dialogue with our Azerbaijani colleagues. We cannot establish peace in South Caucasus without having our Azerbaijani colleagues at the table. That's why we not only continue our delimitation process, and here, Minister, you are completely right. The cooperation and peace should be based on mutual firm acknowledgement of territorial integrity. If you violate the borders, then the whole concept collapses. That's why we can discuss not only the peace treaty, which is again a simple, more or less simple document. No single peace treaty can regulate all the spheres of life or relations between any two countries. That's why also that we discuss a future possible cooperation and transit routes crossing Azerbaijan and also Armenia. So cooperation and engagement is indeed key.
Yeah, Bel.
Yes, I want to bounce back on what I just said, because look at the geographical position of Armenia. It is basically a crossroads, or it can be a crossroads, but it is a landlocked country that is located in between two regions where two of the largest crises in the world are happening. And so either we manage to come up with peace and political solutions to these major regional conflicts that affect the entire world, in which case the peace crossroads that Armenia has designed and implemented will serve as a formidable sort of conducer to growth and prosperity for this South Caucasus region, but much broader for Europe, for the Middle East, and for South Asia. If instead we're not able to bring back peace in those regions, and I'm thinking, of course, the Middle East and Gaza on the one hand, and Ukraine and Russia on the other hand, and then countries like Armenia will be paying the cost of those tensions arising from the lack of respect for the principles of territorial integrity. That's why what's happening in our neighborhood, in our direct neighborhood in Ukraine, is so important. It's not only the security of Europe and the European Union that is at stake. It's this very principle of intangibility of borders that leads us to think that depending on the way the Russian war of aggression on Ukraine will be solved, this will have huge consequences for the entire continent, including for Armenia. And that's why we're supporting Armenia in these testing times. It came with a total of 150 million worth of financing support for, in particular, support for the infrastructure projects that the government is implementing now to make sure, or to sort of create the conditions of cooperation through connectivity infrastructure, which we think is the wisest way to go.
Thank you very much. Tatiana Molsian, if you look at the project that the ECE is currently implementing, we've heard a lot about transit and connectivity as two main aspects. Can you share with us a number of developments and projects that give you hope that economic cooperation will provide the path to peace in the region?
I will continue on the message from Minister Barrot on the connectivity, on the importance of investing in infrastructure to create this routes and crossroads for peace, as they are called, because this is really essential if we are talking about dialogue. You need connectivity, you need access, you need interaction between people in order to build dialogue. This is why investments in infrastructure are important, in particular everything that would facilitate connectivity. At the same time, what we are focused very much now at UNICE is to make sure that these investments are in projects or programs that are resilient. And when I'm speaking about resilience, is both, well, political, which is more difficult, but economic resilience, and also social and environment resilience. Because we can invest a lot. One day we have a flooding, we have a crisis, and all of this investment is compromised. So this is one key area where we work very closely, including with the countries from the region, but specifically with Armenia as well, to see how we can support this development of corridors. One key aspect is the digitalization. These days we cannot advance without looking at the technological progress. Otherwise it's, we are outdated, if I can say like this. We are not relevant if we are not investing enough in creating all and using all the available tools that are provided by technological advancement. So this is key, and this is a message for everyone that supports their region, their country, and the wider, let's say, interregional cooperation. This is key. But I wanted also to refer to one more, because a lot was mentioned about lack of trust, no confidence between the partners. And here's where I see the biggest contribution that we can do, and in particular from the UN, but let's say a regional commission with a more sectoral economic view. It's to help confidence building, but from an angle which is not an immediate obvious one. And I'll give the example of transboundary water cooperation. Yes. One of the regions under focus, Central Asia. I mean, for many years we've been working, but recently we have seen a lot of progress when it comes to addressing the challenges related to sharing common rivers, lakes, groundwaters. And some of the mistrust and misconception have been addressed by just applying some very technical, without political, but really technical instruments that are available there. And I think this is also relevant for this region and actually globally. And I know that France has this as a part of its external policy, foreign policy, to really support countries globally, including for this One Water Summit that was last year, to look at solutions of confidence-building measures, not the usual one that you would suspect, but through cooperation like this, because sometimes tensions are created without real ground. Yes, you need some technical solution, you need some very practical tools, and here's where UN and instruments like UN Water Convention can be very practical and applicable. So I would encourage to use more of those available tools.
Mm-hmm. Yes, please.
I'm sorry to intervene, it's not my turn to speak, but I mostly, of course, agree with Madame Molchan, but if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me if I am mistaken, but if I'm not mistaken, I heard Madame Molchan saying that there is always a window of opportunity. Unfortunately, that's not the case. That's not the case. We have been working hard to speak about normalization of relations with Azerbaijan, with Turkey, deepening our relations with EU, and I'm bringing our own examples, but I am sure that everyone has her own example in this sense. And if we do not deliver very tangible results, then this momentum would be lost. And I think that not only 1 year, not even 2 or 5 years will be needed, but probably a change of generation would be needed, at least in our case, in this region, to rebuild or again to re-establish this dialogue, this cooperation, the potential of which we do have with Azerbaijan, with Turkey, and we are really very, very close. So this is probably the only aspect, the only idea where I think it is necessary to express disagreement.
Niga Göksel, what are your thoughts on the window of opportunity versus the sense of urgency in the Armenian and Azerbaijani peace negotiations, and also the normalization of ties with Turkey?
Thank you. No, I agree with Minister Mirzoyan. I think there is a time sensitivity because of both the regional and local dynamics, and the conversation made me think that these sort of transport routes and cooperation and whatnot, the sort of connectivity, it's like a little bit like a marriage. So you get interlinked and dependent. And sometimes I'll hear in Turkey and Azerbaijan that, what if Armenia becomes a pawn of an external actor that's an adversary to these countries? And I guess what I usually say is isolating or excluding or sidelining Armenia makes that likelihood much more. So it does take a leap of faith to become linked together via infrastructure, but I do think that there's a window of opportunity on that point. I agree. I would also like to sort of point out that it will matter how Turkey, what kind of a place Turkey finds for itself, or Europe finds for Turkey in the evolving strategic architecture, security architecture that's developing in Europe. I think whether if a cooperation on security defense basis can be strengthened between Turkey and its European partners, I think this will have positive spillovers in terms of the potential for Turkey and European partners to work together in this region as well. Yes, I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister Arabikian, Tatiana Molchan mentioned the possibility of using shared water resources as a measure of trust building and deepening ties. Water is, of course, a major issue in the Middle East. Do you see it as an opportunity to build trust among conflict parties?
I think there are lots of opportunities to build trust, but first and foremost, we need to have both parties coming into a peace process with a genuine intent, with an end game of resolving the issue, which means ending the occupation. We have to learn from negotiations rounds of the past. We have embarked on a peace process more than 3 decades ago, And for me as a Palestinian, I don't see that this process gave us anything, but it has emboldened the occupation. We have more settlements today. We have an apartheid regime. Some people don't like to hear it, but I live it. So I know the reality of apartheid. The genuine intent means that both parties agree on certain parameters. They agree on the end game. They have a framework, and they tell us exactly what will happen from step 1 to step 5 to reach that end goal. Without that, we will go into a cycle of negotiations, trust building, and a cycle of violence that will get us nowhere.
Thank you. Minister Barrault?
Yes, thank you. In theory, cooperation infrastructure are conducive to peace. Why? Because when you start trading with another country, the cost of going at war goes up. And so you're going to be discouraged from choosing the path of violence over negotiation and diplomacy. But of course, this is very theoretical because sometimes you're stuck and you cannot decide on your own that you're going to, or in many instances, it's very difficult to decide on your own that you're going to build cooperation or infrastructure with a partner country that is not willing to engage into such a discussion. But sometimes unilateral moves can make a difference. We have a very special example, which is the beginnings of the European Union. So we had World War II. We were 5 years after World War II. And France, who was amongst the winners of the war, was looking at Germany, among the losers of the war, recovering much faster from the war than France was. So there was this temptation in France at the time to make Germany pay once again, and thereby getting sort of dragged into the same logics that led us to World War I and then to World War II and so on and so forth. And then my distant predecessor, Robert Schuman, he had this idea, which was to make a unilateral offer to Germany to pool steel and coal that were at the heart of the competition between France and Germany. And of course, Germany seized the offer when it was made unilaterally. What I'm saying is not that this is going to work in all instances, that is going to work in the Great Lakes, that is going to work in the Middle East, that is going to work here in, between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. What I'm saying is that there is always some hope that when you engage in good faith on the path for cooperation, by sending credible signals like the peace crossroads of the Armenian government, then you're not wasting your time, because you never know, at some point the offer will be seized and you will have done good because you will have anchored the relationship for a long time on solid basis that will guarantee peace and prosperity rather than never-ending conflicts and wars.
Thank you. Minister Arabikian, are there lessons that you can take away from the Armenian-Azerbaijani negotiations at the moment for the Middle East?
Yes, I think Armenia and Azerbaijan have come to terms that the military route will bring them nothing but more destruction. And I think it's time for Israel and Palestine to think the same, because the future means respecting the integrity of both, respecting the presence of both in that area of land, and respecting the right of self-determination for the Palestinian people, as well as respecting the right of Israel to live in peace and security. But for Israel to live in peace and security, it has to respect its neighbors and the integrity of its neighbors. We have extended our arms on forging peace with Israel. And we have recognized the state of Israel in 1988, and we have embarked on this peace process. We are ready to continue that process so that Israel and Palestine can live side by side in peace and security with mutual respect and trust for the future. Our children need that.
Thank you. Coming back to the region and our host, Minister Mirzoyan, We're currently witnessing a struggle between pro-European forces in the region and Eurosceptic or Euro-hostile forces. What does the region need in order to strengthen its ties with Europe and its outlook towards Europe?
Well, you're putting me in a very difficult position, because now I have to speak also about and in place, if I may, I don't know, or I express my ideas about Azerbaijan's perceptions, about Georgia's perceptions. For sure, I can speak definitely for Armenia. So we just adopted a law saying that the government of Armenia should adopt the policy of European integration and policy of becoming a member state of the European Union. So we are in the middle of a process of significantly deepening our ties and integration with the European Union. But also, as you said, there are also Eurosceptics here as well. I was referring to this situation during my previous intervention, saying that there is huge expectation in Armenia, within Armenian society. So we have democracy here. We are diversifying our ties with our international partners. We are launching several programs and mechanisms. We do have a SIPA agreement. We have new partnership agenda with the European Union, but also there is huge expectation. And again, this is a bilateral, process. We can have expectations, but maybe that's not the case, and that's not the readiness from the European side. So we should understand where our visions coincide, and if they do coincide, how to act, how to plan our joint tomorrow. For now, there are huge expectations within Armenian society, and if these expectations are not fulfilled by our government, by our EU colleagues, then we will have a huge frustration. And this is a region where the feelings are very important, historically and traditionally. And if these expectations lead to not fulfillment but to frustration, then again, the momentum would be lost, and I can hardly imagine when we can restart the process again.
Minister Barrot, close us off, please. How can the EU prevent from creating disappointment among populations like we're starting to witness this in the Western Balkans, for example?
Yeah, so first let me look at the glass half full rather than seeing it as half empty. There is a lot of appetite for the European Union right now. In fact, I think it is even underpriced because it is criticized a little bit like, the way you spin your question. European Union is creating discouragement among candidate countries and so on. But it is right now looked as a safe haven for predictability, stability, the rule of law, democracy, and freedom. Because everywhere else in the world, you're seeing some form of backsliding one way or another, or unpredictability, or instability, or uncertainty. And the European Union is an antidote to this evolution of the world that is not good for business, that is not good for people. So Armenia is not alone in its aspiration to join the EU, because joining the EU is not something you do for the money, right? You do it because you crave for democracy and freedom. When you're a candidate country, what's the toughest part? It's not the economic convergence or the social convergence. The toughest part is to align with the EU standards in terms of respect of the rule of law, democracy, freedom of the press, independence of research, independence of justice. This is a treasure that is going to see its value increase at a fast pace in the next few years. And so Armenia is not alone among countries that are looking at the EU as a guarantee for democracy, guarantee for freedom moving forward. Now, of course, as I said, this is a difficult process. It's a difficult process to reach the EU standards in terms of the rule of law. And so it's taking some time, and sometimes people are getting frustrated. And this is what we've seen in some countries in the Western Balkans. We are going to see in the next few years, in the very near future, some countries from the Western Balkan reach the end of their accession process. I think that Montenegro is making a very significant process. Albania is making great progress. And they will serve as examples for the other countries of the region that are willing to follow suit. But I agree also that it's the responsibility of the EU to work with candidate countries to facilitate the public acceptability of the efforts that need to be made until the accession is reached. And that's the spirit in which we've been supporting the European Peace Facility for Armenia. That's the spirit in which we've entered into a discussion on visa liberalization. And that's the spirit in which we're going to facilitate, if indeed Armenia becomes a candidate country, its gradual accession to some of the dimensions of the single market so that the citizens, but also the authorities in Armenia, realize that their efforts will not be in vain and that there are tangible benefits to the accession, and that even before the whole process is completed. So in summary, the EU is currently underpriced, but countries that are facing huge threat in their regional, in their neighborhood, know the value of democracy and freedom, and that's the reason why they're looking in the direction of the EU. The times we're living through, where we're seeing some more instability, more uncertainty, is giving even more value to the EU accession process, but it's also the responsibility of the EU to make sure that candidate countries deserve special treatment.
Thank you very much, Minister Barrot. Unfortunately, we've reached the end of our discussion, and obviously we were unable to have an exhaustive debate on the huge topic. Unfortunately, we won't have time for further discussion. We will move on to the next aspect in the program, and let me thank our excellent panelists for their lively discussion. I hope that this debate was the beginning of many fruitful exchanges. Thank you very much. So I hope that this will be the beginning of many fruitful exchanges on this important topic. Thank you very much for attending this debate.
Energy infrastructure against hybrid threats. For the moderation of the panel, I'd like to invite Mr. Fabian Vigrand, Senior Director Energy of Tetra Techno. Mr. Vigrand, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you so much. Green technology as a shield, strengthening energy infrastructure against hybrid threats. Welcome to our panel, and I will start with a brief setting of the scene. Energy security has always been a crucial element of geopolitics, and geopolitics has always had a large impact on energy security. With greater technical sophistication, not just the energy supply routes, but also domestic energy infrastructure are more at risk. Energy has become smarter, more distributed, more interconnected, and more vulnerable. The number of participating generators and consumers has grown exponentially, and with it also the so-called attack surface. The number of cyber attacks and ransomware cases on electricity utilities in the US, India and Ukraine, and many other countries increased. Gas pipelines have for a long time been the target of sabotage. But also electricity interconnection cables, for example in the Baltic Sea, crucial for integrating renewable energy, is now being targeted. There are concerns in the US about so-called kill switches in Chinese solar power inverters, which could take entire solar plants offline. The power outages at the Cannes Film Festival last week seem to have been an act of sabotage. And the fire of a substation near Heathrow Airport in March showed how energy infrastructure failure can result in massive impacts on global transportation. The move towards green technology has enabled many countries to reduce their dependency on fossil fuel imports. Decentralization has also, for example, in the case of Ukraine, improved the physical security of energy infrastructure. But for clean energy to be scaled, grids, producers and consumers have to be more digitally interlinked. Supply chains of critical minerals needed for clean energy are often located in geopolitically challenging situations. 3 weeks ago, a massive blackout has left 60 million people in Spain and Portugal without power. The technical cause is not yet known, but it shows how much conventional and renewable energy grids in neighboring countries need to coordinate and communicate in the new energy world to secure security of supply. Through the energy transition, we are building a new energy system with a new operating design. This also provides the opportunity to build in a more resilient system, to build a green shield, if you will. Our esteemed panelists will discuss these challenges, solutions, and options for collaboration. With us, we have Rastislav Jovanec, Deputy Minister of Foreign and European Affairs from Slovakia. We have His Excellency Dr. Abdallah Belhaif Al-Nuaimi, Chairman of the Sharjah Consultative Council and former Ministry of the Environment of the UAE. We have Haik Yezayan, the CEO of Team Telecom in Armenia. We have Ornella Ciucci, Head of the Research Center of the Western Balkan University in Albania, and Liliana Śmiech, Director General for International Affairs of the Ludovika University of Public Service in Hungary. And I'm Fabian Wiegand, Senior Director and Energy Transition Practice Lead at the engineering consultancy Tetra Tech. We will start the discussion, then in the end hopefully give you also in the audience room for questions. And let me begin by giving His Excellency Al-Nuaimi room for quick intervention on the long-term clean energy development. His Excellency, what is your long-term view on security and resilience from the climate change angle?
Thank you very much. I was actually amazed this morning by the address of the Prime Minister and whoever came after him. And the navigating the unknowns came to my mind as an issue that we all should be talking about. I came to this place, to this room, this morning with a full capacity of people. Now, one can see very little. That shows how much awareness we have about the unknown and how much awareness we have about navigating the unknowns. If we are to navigate the unknowns, what is it that we really need to navigate? Do we really want to navigate the climate change, by which we thought 15 or 16 years ago in 2015 that the temperature, the atmospheric temperature, should not actually go below 2 degrees Celsius and preferably 1.5 degree. As of last January of this year, we have seen the second warmest January in the history, where the temperature has actually risen for 1.75 degrees Celsius. And that is above what we thought that could be our target in Paris Agreement. Are we navigating the unknowns of climate justice when we see 33 million people in Pakistan having no homes and no hopes after the government spending 30 billion to interfere into the climate change? Are we really navigating the unknowns when we get into producing a new energy or a new renewables that maybe some of it is creating problems, when we know that a gas like hydrogen that does not exist on our atmosphere, and we are spending trillions in producing a gas that can participate into infiltrating the ozone. Today, as we speak, we have actually managed to get the nitrous oxide into 10 times as it used to be a decade ago. So are we navigating the unknown with tools that goes beyond our institutions and research institutions and universities? I am surprised to come and see navigating the unknowns with no knowledge of what is it that we really want to navigate. Today we have the biggest disasters that the whole globe should put its efforts together to make and provide solutions. Unfortunately, we are not doing that. We do not have globally a platform that could tell us what is it that we should navigate to intervene and reduce the emissions into our atmosphere. I have actually visited so many schools all over the world, and I have seen our kids have no awareness of what is going to be happening in the 2050. Unfortunately, I am sorry to say that navigating the unknowns with no tools would actually create more disasters and probably more vulnerable climatic conditions, and we would probably be looking into solutions that are not relevant to our future disasters. Even when we talk about the new minerals are also navigating the unknowns, that new minerals are again just oil and gas. They will exhaust one day, and then we will end up having no solution. So I think we have to be very careful when we look into navigating the unknowns and what is it that we really need to talk about. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, His Excellency. Now let's look a bit more at the security policy angle, and the first question to the remaining panelists is how you perceive the risk for critical infrastructure these days, particularly in your own country or region, and how this risk is evolving through trends such as green technologies, digitalization, and hybrid conflict. And I would like to start with Mr. Ševanits.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, obviously the risks are high and they are growing. Right now, we are so dependent on energy that maybe only drinking water is the second issue, similarly important to us on an everyday, every second basis. And it makes it quite easy to target the energy either sector or energy appliances. We are under threat on numerous levels. One of them is obviously the real bombing or destroying these energy facilities, but also there are some hybrid ways how to hurt us, especially in the cybersecurity area, but also on the other ways, other instruments. For example, I will use the example of Slovakia. We are heavily dependent on supply of this energy. Maybe not or we are able to produce a lot of energy by ourselves, but we are dependent on a nuclear fuel, which is right now for us something that we cannot substitute. We are heavily dependent on importing, for example, gas and oil, and we are getting into the situation where we are losing potential suppliers because, of course, the European Union, due to the situation in Ukraine, is trying to cut off itself from the Russian supplies. But right now, and even though we want to have different suppliers, it's quite difficult for us to bring another or the gas from other countries in a sufficient amount to Slovakia. We have some problems with the interconnection pipelines. We have the problems, even though if we find a new pipeline, the costs for transportation are much higher. So at the end of the day, our companies and our economy is not competitive because we have much higher energy prices than, for example, our US and I'm not even speaking about Chinese competitors. So there are many threats or many risks that we should cover. Of course, European Union is trying to introduce all possible measures how to work with climate change. The question is if these measures are working and if they are not hurting us in other sectors. We think that we should have the calculation about the impact, because on one hand we are really focusing on the green technologies, but on the other hand we are doing it at the expense of our industry. And even though we would say that, okay, we are willing to take this risk or this trade-off, in the long term, it's showing us that it's not working, as His Excellency mentioned, because if it will be only few countries trying to change their behavior or the way how they are producing, then it's not enough, because the situation with the climate change is not good. So right now, I believe that we should focusing on maybe less instruments, but the ones that would be heavily adopted by all our countries, because there has to be something done. I agree that the situation is critical and it's only getting worse.
Thank you so much. Ornella Ciucci, what is your perspective from working particularly on Western Balkan integration and integration to the EU?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And it's my fourth time in Armenia, in Yerevan, and I want to thank the ORF for giving us this opportunity to explore this amazing country, and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to give us the opportunity to see and to enjoy the heritage of this country and to see how much important this country is about the civilization of all of Europe. And thank you for this. So we are talking here about how we can build energy systems that don't just power our homes, but also protect our sovereignty. So in the 20th century, we thought about oil, and now, in the 21st, we'd better learn how to protect our lives. Across the globe, the energy systems are now part of the battlefield, but not through bombs, but through hybrid threats, cyber attacks, infrastructure sabotage, supply chain disruptions. And this part, I am from Albania, and probably you have heard about the Iran attack in our country for a long month. And they destroyed everything, every digitalization that we have done under our government processes. So lastly, the NATO review and the European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats are clear. Our grids, pipelines, digital control systems are now the targets of the hybrid conflict. And also, by the other hand, the University of Stanford warns that while decarbonization improves geopolitical autonomy, it increases the vulnerability to digital attack vectors. Yes, we are every smart meter, every connecting wind turbine, and also we can find other ways how to make cheap solar panels, but it's a big risk about that requires design and also legislation. So the green energy create new dependencies now. It's not our dependencies, they are not about oil, they are on critical minerals like lithium and other first materials. And the whole globe is going from from one form of geopolitical exposure to another form, from the fuels to mineral geopolitics. So yes, we need to diversify our clean energy portfolio, hydropower, solar, wind, bioenergy, geothermal. But in the meantime, and GCF and GEF also, the multilateral, these institutions, funds, global funds, through the World Bank, EBRD, UNDP, and other biggest organisms, they have another overview on the systems. They are not just investing on the solar panels, but even they are already shifted their frameworks, not only just financing megawatts, but they are financing the resilience and the sustainability of all this process. And I will want to share with you the case of the Western Balkans here, EU, which it's our target. We are part of Euro geographically, but we are not part of Euro geopolitically. So EU promised 9 million euros for our green transition. And now, 2 or 3 years later, we are now seeming as European extraterrestrials here, because no one is talking anymore about the green transition or the green economy or nothing else. Even Europe, it's not talking even for peace. It's only about the defense economy. So what about this green transition, and what about our sovereignty, our energy sovereignty? So it's like, and they promised us this 9 billions, but in the meantime, and we were obliged to transpose our legislation from the European legislation into Albanian shoes or Western Balkan shoes, and it's like designing a Ferrari energy vision into our LADA project pipelines. And within these objectives that we had, we transposed the German legislation for Albania reality, and now we have 0 funds for the defense as country. For the first time, they are obliging us to put this 2% for the defense, and this 2%, they are coming from our investments into the energy pipelines. So, yes, in Albania, for example, we are a unique case in Europe. We are producing almost 90% of our energy is produced from hydropowers, from waters. We are blessed with waters, but in the meantime, we are also blessed from the climate change impacts. Big floods, big droughts. So these droughts, it's disrupting our supply, and so we need more. But we gap legislation, we gap standards, we gap investments, we gap diversity, diversifying our, and almost we gap skilled industrial energy professionals. So in all this big gap between the European legislation, European reality, and Western Balkan reality, what's our point, and what's our defense, and what's our obligations about the defense and the energy sector?
Thank you. May I ask Mr. Yezayan to give a perspective from the private sector in your experience?
Actually, from the private sector, I guess, two specters. First of all, as much you as a company is more sustainable on energy part, it's more predictable for you to have long run projection on production, also or service giving. You know, the last 5 years, the digitalization is growing on ITC, and it's giving us that we are, as a company, using of total facility 1% of total energy capacity of the country. How much we will be more sustainable on a greener energy, it will help country to help more be sustainable all in all. And last year we did a lot of moves. Till the end of the year, 40% of our energy usage will be green. It's almost solar, hydro, and as we see also the storage systems are very important for the country for the security reason, to have diversified the energy. And also, as you mentioned, cyber attacks also, they are very important for countries, as Armenia is small. But all in all, I will be focused on different countries to be more different security visions, because as much you are smaller, your security strategy will be totally different as US or Europe countries, because they are more connected to each other. And to apply same security policies to the small countries, I think it's not very reasonable. And as a small country, we have very big chance to have also very independent on energy part, and also on the security of the networks that connecting also energy and different type of digitalization in the country.
Thank you so much. And Mrs. Schmier, may I ask you for your perspective also from the international relations side?
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's my first time in Armenia, but so far so good. And just actually commenting on my colleague's message regarding the empty promises by the European Union. Well, I'm not sure if actually European Union is the one that I would like to follow with regards to the energy policy, because what we did, we delivered regulation without the actual resilience. So I'm not sure if this green dependence policy is the one that I would recommend to our partners from outside the European Union. But just going directly to your question, well, green technologies and digitalization, yes, they bring the progress, but at the same time they bring much more vulnerabilities that we can experience. And from the Central Europe perspective, what we've learned is that energy security is not just a technical issue. It is about our sovereignty. And especially from the Polish perspective, I'm Polish. We learned it quite quickly. We invested a lot in the LNG infrastructure. Now we are investing a lot in the nuclear perspectives. But at the same time, if you look, for example, at the Hungarian model that promotes affordability and it promotes different partnerships, that's another very good model that we could actually develop in the future. If we really want a true security in the European Union, we need more than just the targets. Well, targets are important, but only if they are not driven by empty climate slogans, but they actually promote the strategic objectives that we need in the whole European Union. At this current moment, what we're doing, we're only killing our own internal sectors. And if we won't stop it, we will be in the much bigger troubles in the near future.
Mr. Yazayan, we mentioned here already now a bit the topic of regulation, of targets. I mean, for you, I imagine it, on the one hand, you want frameworks for cybersecurity, but you also want to be fast and innovative. How can we design cybersecurity regulation that doesn't harm innovation?
To be a joke, to not regulate that much that we need. But reality is that regulation by our governance is going very slowly. But cyber attack and cyber security changes is much more faster. And we have to be more attractive there and more on the ground to change faster, or to just build an ecosystem where can work also the companies, private companies with the government, to act, react, and to be faster as in a war. Because in reality it's war, and it can become within a couple of seconds. And every, system can be attacked and can be hacked finally. It's only the timing issue. They will take 10 minutes, or it will take like day or something. I think this is the main point for all of the world, to be change the mindset of the regulation of the security reason. And also I believe, as I mentioned, every country has its own network architect, which is totally different. Depends on the country size, depends on how many borders it's connected. Like if we can talk about Armenia, that we have four countries across us, but we have main connectivity from one direction, like 90%, we can also through Georgia. It means it's easily to disconnect the country from outside gateway to stop attack if it's coming outside. The inside attacks is totally different, and we have to be regulate inside and outside attacks differently. And as I mentioned, we have to work with the private and government together to have joined some institution to work on the legislation, and to not put more legal parts there than reactions.
Thank you so much. Mr. Yerevan, when you look more at the European integration process, we had a chat just before the start of this panel on gas infrastructure and transmission corridors. Where do you see the biggest need in Europe to create a more integrated, reliable trading framework that would enable you to be energy secure?
Europe is right now, or EU is right now, under a lot of pressure because of the war in Ukraine. Of course, European Union wants to put a lot of pressure also on Russia with cutting off the member states from Russian energy supply, which I can understand, but again, it comes at the expense of competitiveness, or it's not even taking into consideration the real infrastructure that there is. I will again use the example of Slovakia, that we have a lot of interconnections between Slovakia and Austria and Czech Republic and Hungary, but if you take into consideration the whole amount of gas that we are able to import, not using the Ukrainian interconnector or Russian gas that would come from the South Stream, that's not sufficient for our demand. We are not able to get new slots in some docks or harbors, or how you want to call it, that we would be able to bring LNG to Slovakia. So I really believe we need to diversify our energy sources, but it cannot be a knee-jerk reaction. It cannot happen that, okay, today I will come up with regulation or with an idea and you have to implement it within 6 months, because that's not going to happen in energy sector. So I really believe we would be able to find a solution first, to do a very good feasibility study, calculate the costs, calculate how it will impact our companies and our economy, and based on that we can do the changes. Of course, it's not, we don't have enough time, or it's not going to happen that easily, but I would really like to see the more thought out activities. You mentioned gas. I will say, I will use the example of this nuclear fuel, that Slovakia has 70% of its nuclear, from its energy supply from nuclear power plants. And we try to diversify. We even worked with American company that would offer us the nuclear fuel. It's not working yet. If it would be working, it would need, again, 3 years for certification. So the idea is that we need to have different suppliers. It just cannot happen in a very short period of time. And that's what I really believe also the people in Brussels will realize.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Smiach, when we're looking at the security, so far we discussed a lot about the digital security. If we're looking more at the physical security of interconnections, particularly now active sabotage in the Baltic Sea, what do you think are suitable frameworks to protect such interconnections between countries?
Well, my answer would be quite short. Just don't rely on the external infrastructure and build your own. That would be the easiest solution. Depending on whatever supplier it is, it's dangerous. If we rely on one supplier, no matter whether it is China, whether it is maybe a bit controversial, US, if we rely on one supplier, it will cause some troubles in the future. So what we should do in the European Union, and I believe it should be rather overall goal, overall aim for all of us, for all of the countries in the EU, but also our partners, Western Balkans, Central Asia, Caucasus, East Asia, we should build our own European infrastructure. We should develop our own technologies. We should actually protect our own national markets. And then, if we do not have certain components, reach out to external actors. And that would be the solution. I don't see any other solution at this moment.
But just a follow-up question on that. Are you suggesting that within Europe there should be less integration and less flow and trade of energy?
No, within the EU there should be more, of course. The more connections, the better.
So how would
if I have, as a Poland, let's say, hypothetically, if I can already assure the energy to my citizens, that would be affordable and it would be reliable, then I should help my neighbors. And that's actually what is happening because of the interconnectors that we are building with our neighbors. And if we cannot do it within the format of the European Union, there is regional cooperation. Why not to work within, for example, 3CC initiative? It is actually about building infrastructure within the part of Europe that had a bit different historical experiences. That, for example, the Western Europe, most of the connections in the past were being built from west to east, but nothing was built from north to south, and that's what we should support within our region. So yes, absolutely, more connections, more infrastructure, to be more reliable partners within the EU, and then to be exactly on the same level if we are making business with our external partners. We are equal. We cannot go to the negotiation table from the worst position. So yes, we should invest in our European market.
Thank you. Mrs. Ciucci, you are on the board of the Green Climate Fund. You're heavily involved in the Global Environmental Facility. If we're now looking at the Global South and developing countries where you help to shape the framework, how can we support critical infrastructure protection in developing countries? And what is the role that finance institutions, particularly development banks, can play to set the right standards?
Oh, thank you. So let me share something personal. I have been part of the government of Albania for 5 years, 7 years almost, coming from academia, and I am again in academia now. And so what I have seen within the government, and not only for our government, if you don't want to do a job, you have to create an interministerial group for doing this job. And you will have, for sure, not work done. So what countries need? Yes, we need to work, as you said, and you don't need probably as private sector the governments, but the governments, they need legislations, and the governments within their standards in the energy law, they must prepare mandatory cybersecurity and AI readiness standards immediately. We are, with our laws now, we are just regulating our voltage levels, but nobody is caring about regulating our digital protections, which is a must. Secondly, cross-border collaboration. It's a must. In Albania, we are only 3 million people. But in Balkans, we are 70 million. So if we will be all together working on this, we will work better, for sure. Let's think this as a weather forecast for hybrid risk. It will be good. Secondly, and thirdly, so it's about technical and industrial human capital. And that I am not talking about codification. I am talking about green workers. In my country, we don't have green workers. We have less and less green workers. I don't know if you're in your countries, but as I am seeing in European countries, we don't have just smart workers. We need to be skilled, certified, and resilient also. The fourth, it's the collaboration between, and it's very important, for the triple helix collaboration. And I'm talking here about governments, not only central, but even local governments. I'm talking about universities, academians, and private sector. Without this collaboration, nothing can be done. And the last one, it's the finance, and the most important, I think, it's the finance. And I'm sharing here my experience from the Green Climate Fund, which is the biggest fund, multilateral funds for small countries like mine, but even for small islands, but even for developing countries. So, two big problems. The first one, bureaucracy. Even EU has bureaucracies, but Green Climate Funds, big bureaucracies. The last project that we had from the Green Climate Funds, we needed 7 years for the approval of one project. In 7 years, we have to change our projects because it's not relevant anymore. The second one is delivery partners, and I'm talking about local expertise. We can't buy always German, US expertise for our realities. We need our own delivery partners, our own local partners to be accredited for this management, for the management of these funds. And almost we need our own banks, secondary level banks. Without this and only EBRD, we can't do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. His Excellency Al-Nuaimi, may I ask you to wrap this panel up, and afterwards we have some questions from the audience, hopefully, on solutions. You mentioned that there is a massive problem these days, that the conversation has shifted that climate change is there's not enough focus on it anymore. You also mentioned that you feel that some technologies which are suggested to tackle climate change would bring with them follow-up problems. What are then the solutions you're looking at?
It's great, thank you very much. I think what I have heard from the panelists is really very promising. But we still think in directions. We think in global north to support global south, and we still have that issue pending within each globe. So I think solutions could actually be, the way I think about it, solutions could actually be looking into three different thoughts. One is establishing a global platform that shows all the data. Today, whatever has been done in Hungary is unknown probably to their neighbor. The emission of this country is unknown to their neighbor. So if we have a platform that shows all the activities, everything that we do on Earth, and what is it that cost the environment, what is the cost of that emission to our Earth, that is a good solution where everybody knows who does what and how we fight it. The second is getting back, I think you've discussed something nice. I think we really need to get the whole issue of climate change and energy solutions and the future renewable solutions back into research institutions and universities. We have actually taken it off the places where solutions are built on fundamentals. Today, solutions are not built on fundamentals. Basically, they are built either in innovations or in decision making. The third is having a localhood where institutions that combined all the possible solutions, innovations that we can do. And I'm very pleased to see this in my country. United Arab Emirates is having Masdar in one end that does all the green projects support, whether in town, in the country or outside the country, and also having arena on the next door. So that is something that could be thought of as a future solution, particularly when we think that this specific country has almost all the universities of the world that are operating, researching, and actually cooperating and working together. So the solution could actually be within this format, summarizing global platform, looking into institutions to do some research, and having a hub that could actually be fair to everybody.
Thank you so much. There is still room for 2 questions from the audience. I would ask you to only state your name and institution, and please don't make a statement, just a question.
Wahid Kamalian from Amali Legacy. My question is to His Excellency. The UAE is indeed in the forefront of innovation. We are seeing that already with N5 backed by the government of Dubai. We are seeing that through accelerators through Masdar, through IRENA, Mohammed bin Rashid Innovation Fund, and a number of other initiatives. What do you believe is the role of technology, especially from a UAE perspective, to support the green development transition? Thank you.
Thank you. I take one more question, and please be very brief with the question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Christopher Alcuri from Italy. My question is mainly for the European present here, mainly EU. We know that the green transition and green energy is essential. It's evident now that it's essential for economic diversification and strategic autonomy. But as you mentioned in this panel, and it's very interesting to hear, this creates new dependencies on critical raw materials. Now my question is, we are seeing the big powers like Russia, China, the US, and other regional powers already having a pragmatic posture in this and investing in geopolitical projects of extraction and mining. is Europe ready to become pragmatic on a geopolitical level and step up besides its critical raw material act that looks more in a circular economy perspective, or it's not ready to do so? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me give the answer first to His Excellency.
I think, thank you very much for these questions, because I believe that we do have an existing technologies, but unfortunately, we don't use them globally. Today, we are using artificial intelligence into anything but solutions for future renewables or so forth. We are not clubbing artificial intelligence with quantum physics, because quantum computing and physics are a technology that exists, but nobody is really putting it together with artificial intelligence. Also, the third technology is the nanotechnology. We do have spent so much on nanotechnology globally, but we are not clubbing this nanotechnology to come mimicking some new renewable, new minerals, new elements that would actually replace the depleting renewables that we are seeking for, whether it is lithium or anything else for the solar panel, or even rare mineral materials that is in China.
Thank you. Mr. Šuvenec, can I ask you to answer on the question on critical raw material supply chains and the balance between European philosophy and pragmatism?
Yeah, this is a very difficult question. I'm afraid EU will not be very pragmatic, because EU has its ideological, how we call it? Well, EU is trying to be the front runner on some different on some of these topics. I think the bottom line, we are having troubles with the definitions. What is actually green technology? Are we talking about non-carbon technology? Are we talking about technology that is absolutely extracting from the oil and gas? Or are we speaking about, for example, electromobility? Is it green technology? Yes, it is. But if you take into consideration the whole life cycle of the batteries, I'm not really sure that it's helping our climate eventually. So, taking into consideration all these aspects, I believe that EU will not be very pragmatic, especially considering working with the countries where these materials are mined or should be mined. But also, I see one more problem. Even if it would be possible to find the supply of these raw materials in EU, just to get the process that would allow you to have the mining and to get the permits to extract this from the earth, it would take many years. What I'm afraid of, this train already left. We are having troubles that most of the known supply is already, I would say, booked by some other countries, by some other companies that are non-EU countries. And that's something that we really have to think about, that how much are we willing to invest into our well-being and how much we are investing into our ideological approach.
May I? Sorry, may I? Because I'm not Europe and I'm not in politics anymore, I can be politically practical and not politically or diplomatically correct. So Europe is saying nothing about this. Have you heard a single minister of energy saying something about the European dependence on the Russian gas? Nothing, zero. We haven't heard a zero word about this. But Europe is forgetting that energy is not about light, it's about defense. And when we are talking about green, nothing is just green. It's green and guarded. And if we want to be guarded, we have to work green. Thank you.
And if I may just answer your question, whether Europe is ready. Well, I think Europe as a whole is not ready. Separate nations are ready, and I actually believe that your country could be ready, and I believe there are several other members of the European Union who could be ready. But what we need, I believe we need a new leadership that would have a common vision for the whole organization, because at this moment we do not have it. And if we will float into this direction, it would be like jumping into a pool but without water. And that's where we are going. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me wrap up this panel, unless Mr. Yazayan, you want to mention something on critical raw materials as well.
Actually, from business perspective, is totally different than governance or politicals are thinking. As much, I can say just only thing, we have to be more focused on country level to our businesses to have more attractive. And also have not only have a green energy, not only for only saying that we are going green, to fix the issue with our climate change. And as a person, if every person wants to leave this country or world better than he came, I think all we can change together. This is the only issue. If any person wants to leave this country better of you as a nation, as a world, then he came, I think we can do that. If some people want to live good life only in their life period, like 80, 90, or whatever they will live, we will not change anything. This is, I think, the key point of all of the people, nations who lives in this earth.
Thank you so much. Let's make sure we use this year until the next Yerevan Dialogues for some good homework we got now from the panel. Thank you so much, everyone, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the conference.
here today. We're excited to have a great panel discussion on the role of trade and transport connectivity in prompting regional cooperation. It is an honor for me to present our moderator, Madam Nada Al-Hajri, the president of Yemen Information Center, who will guide our discussion today. So, Madam Nada, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start by thanking the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Armenia and the ORF team, as well as their partners, for hosting us today. And welcome to this timely discussion on the role of trade and transport connectivity in promoting regional cooperation. In today's interconnected yet deeply fragmented world, cross-border trade and the infrastructure that supports it have become central not only to economic growth, but also to diplomacy, development, and peace. For decades, international trade has been a vehicle for lifting countries out of poverty, linking producers and consumers across borders, and building trust between nations. Efficient transport networks, harmonized customs processes, and inclusive trade policies form the backbone of this system. And when well designed, these systems can empower smaller and developing economies, like Yemen, to participate more fairly in global markets. But we are at a crossroads. The world is witnessing a troubling erosion of faith in international institutions and multilateral frameworks, institutions that have historically helped to level the playing field for less developed countries, particularly in sectors like trade. Their ability to mediate, support, and regulate trade cooperation is being questioned just when we need them most. Diplomacy in this context has a renewed role, not only in negotiating trade agreements, but in building the confidence and trust required to support regional and global connectivity. Strategic infrastructure, trade corridors, and regional cooperation frameworks are not merely technical projects. They are diplomatic tools that can foster peace, promote resilience, and drive sustainable development. We will discuss these themes during the session with our esteemed panelists today, and I will start with His Excellency Mr. Vahan Kostanyan, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Armenia. It's been valuable to learn from the various sessions of the dialogue today, and particularly impressive for me has been to hear about Armenia's commitment to peace, echoed throughout the comments from your ministers this morning, especially given that Armenia faces unique geographical and geopolitical challenges. How has Armenia navigated these challenges to improve trade and transport connectivity?
Thank you very much. And before answering to your question, let me comment the energy and resilience of those who stayed for 6 p.m. session. But coming to a question, as you rightly mentioned, the geographical and geopolitical challenges are huge that we are facing, but in the same time, the question is what we are doing with these challenges, whether we are sitting down and just complaining that we have geographical challenges, that we are a landlocked mountainous country with no access to sea, or we are trying to get solutions. And to transfer the challenges into the opportunities. Of course, when you are looking to a broader map from Europe to China, you might see that one of the few bottlenecks on the logistical chain is the South Caucasus and also Armenia, because of a too close border with two of our neighbors, Azerbaijan and Turkey. But in the same way, this is also an opportunity for us to reach the opening of the communications and to develop the interconnectivity and interdependence. Our strategic belief and the vision of opening of the communications was presented today in the morning during Prime Minister Pashinyan, and we do believe that with the opening of communications, we will be able to create additional interdependencies in the region, which will promote stability and peace. And sometimes, and especially nowadays, there are too many political issues around the world, probably solutions, and when political solutions are not working, probably economic component should be highlighted, and the struggle of finding economic benefits can bring to political solutions and stronger peace efforts as well. I will stop here probably.
Thank you. And picking up the thread of promoting stability and peace, allow me to move to Dr. Yair Hirschfeld, Senior Lecturer, Middle East History at the University of Haifa, Israel, and Advisor to Israeli-Palestinian Jordanian Peace Organization, ECHO Peace Middle East. Dr. Hirschfeld, based on your 50 years of experience advising on the peace process, what are your thoughts on the humanitarian and trade corridor? And in your view, what are some of the security and political consequences?
In the front, there you go.
Thank you very much for your question. Thank you very much, Armenia, for this wonderful meeting. And many thanks also to Yerevan Dialogue, which this is a follow-up. And the Yerevan Dialogue created a lot of initiatives that followed up, and I may relate to one or two of them. If you want to understand the political and strategic meaning of the connectivity in Gaza and the West Bank and Israel and Jordan, you have to understand that for Gaza, the future of Gaza, there are three different everybody wants humanitarian help. We do too little, but that's another issue. But there are three strategic concepts. Two are disaster, and one is the one we all want, I assume. The first one is a disaster if Israel will stay in Gaza for always and ever, and will try to control Gaza, and I don't know whatever. And people will leave. I assume you will agree with me, this is terrible. The second one is the more likely one, and European policy may lead to it. And I heard some things in the former session that may actually lead the way to Gaza, where Hamas remains an important actor. And if Hamas remains an important actor, this is the major, this will make it impossible to reach a two-state solution. It will make it impossible to take a fair path towards a two-state solution. Now, the path to a two-state solution has to go along with Israeli needs, with Palestinian needs, and the needs of the international community. And what I would like to argue today, and it will need more detail about it, that EcoPeace has prepared a study that was written by a former Palestinian Transport Minister, Ali Shad, a former Palestinian head of the customs, and an Israeli economic. It's called the Humanitarian and Trade Corridor, the Humanitarian Trade Corridor to Gaza, based on the trilateral Israeli-Palestinian Jordanian triangle. And the basic study says some things that are quite simple but very decisive. It says that if we want to rebuild Gaza, you need to get humanitarian aid of per day, not what we have today, but you need 6,000 trucks going into Gaza daily. And we worked out the details, and the details make it very clear that Israel has to open up 11 border crossings, some from Jordan to Palestine, from Jordan to Israel, from Israel to Gaza, from Egypt. There are 11 entries that have to be opened up. And the idea that you can that by Israel bashing and not taking care of Israeli security needs is absurd. And therefore, if we move this, well, if you get 6,000 trucks to get into Gaza, it means that you get economic development all over, and you can only do it in a regional context. In order to do it, in order to do it, you need the small amount, a little bit more than I have got in my pocket, of $120 billion. Now, there's no government that is going to give $120 billion, but if you look at the export, the foreign trade export of the United Arab Emirates, they have $600 billion foreign trade that they actually entertain. For the $600 billion to give $10 billion to Palestine that are needed in order to go ahead. You don't want to say it's peanuts, but it is something that makes sense within a regional economic structure. And the same is true for Saudi Arabia. You need the investment, the reconstruction of Gaza, the rebuilding of the West Bank economically. The path to a Palestinian state can only be in a wider regional context, because only in the wider regional context with trade connectivity this is actually doable. And in order to do this, the organization to which I'm giving advice has worked much. We started actually 2020 on IMEC, on what became the Indo-Middle East European Corridor. In the meantime, I'll give you a short description of achievements that have been made. There are three people. There's Israeli Gideon Bomberg, there's a wonderful Palestinian lady, Nada Majdalani, and the Jordanian lady, Yona Abu Talib. And they were together, they were for 2 months, they were going from one place to the other. They started in Canada, and in Canada is opening in several weeks. They will have a meeting of the G7 and open the Secretariat of IMEC. Then they went to the United States, had a meeting in the White House, had a meeting in the Congress, had a meeting in the Department of State, worked about the humanitarian corridor, got Trump's position of it, which I'll jump to it. The next stage was Italy. In Italy, they met Madame Meloni and her supporter and her chief advisor. They met the people of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And while Trump wants it without the Jordanian-Palestinian Israeli corridor, Madame Meloni wants it. And Madame Meloni actually went to the United States and discussed it with Trump, and she has the confidence of Trump. And he said, if you do it, I'll be fine with it, and we can go along. So you have IMEC. IMEC is basically the structure that needs to support it. Now, we believe, and for my French Minister of Foreign Affairs, this may be a tough message, but you should be aware of it. The IMEC as rebuilding Gaza, as building a structure, a security structure, political structure, is only possible if it is led by the triumvirate, President Trump, Madame Meloni, and von der Leyen. And I must say, I'll come to it, von der Leyen has done wonderful work. She does wonderful things, and she promotes it and will...
Thank you, Dr. Hirschfeld.
Wait, I'm finished?
Thank you. We'll come back to you.
Can I have two more minutes?
1 more minute, please.
What we need is a secretariat, two more minutes. We need a secretariat. We need a secretariat of IMEC that will be will lead the governments of Gaza, where Israel and the United States will be in charge of security issues. The Palestinian, the PA will be in charge. The PA will be in charge of social welfare, of health, of many other issues, and they have a very good government on these issues. The economic issues will have to be led by the Gulf states, and you need some kind of structure to organize it. We have to talk to the Europeans and to others how to develop this. We are still in the beginning, but by listening to the others, we'll find a way how to put this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Allow me to move to Dr. Joseph Karl Pelikan, Director of the Division of Regional Bureaus and Field Coordination at the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO. Can you provide examples from UNIDO's experience of successful technical assistance or regional cooperation projects that have strengthened trade competitiveness?
Thank you, Nada. Thank you for being here on this distinguished panel. Well, UNIDO is the technical organization amongst UN family. Our mandate is based on SDG 9, Sustainable Development Goal 9, advocates for inclusive industry, future-oriented innovation and resilient infrastructure. As mentioned by Mr. Kostanyan beforehand, I think challenges need to be followed by solutions. That's our starting point. We have 173 member states. We have 49 offices worldwide. One here in Yerevan. The office is led by Mr. Shiar Edelian, who sits here amongst the audience. And our motto is progress.